Welcome to the African Weekly Roundup, a weekly program every Sunday here on HORUFADHI Media, where I discuss the latest news and events across the African continent. I'm Sultan Mohammed, your host and producer here on HORUFADHI Media. We hope you find this program very informative. Please like, share, and for similar content, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media. Also, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media Group's second channel, known as HORUFADHI TV, where you are currently watching this program and where you can find other exclusive programs, such as Behind the Scenes and Mahahi Salah, among others. And last but not least, do follow myself, Sultan Mohammed, Suleiman Hashi, Yasin Abdi, and the wider HORUFADHI Media team on our social media platforms that should appear on the screen any moment. Let's get straight into the news, and we'll kick off in Equatorial Guinea, where voting is set to kick off on Sunday in a general election in which President Theodore Obiang, the world's longest-standing president, is expected to extend his 43-year rule at the helm of the tiny oil-producing West African nation. Over 400,000 people registered to vote in a country of around 1.5 million people. Voters will also cast ballots to elect 100 members of parliament for the lower house and 55 of the country's 70 senators and local mayors. Observers expect no surprises. The 80-year-old Obiang has always been elected with over 90% of votes in polls whose fairness international observers have questioned, given long-standing complaints by rights groups over a lack of political freedom. He's vying for a sixth term against two opposition candidates, Mr. Usumu, who's running for the sixth time against Obiang, and Andres Ondo, who's running for the first time. The United States and the European Union called for a free and fair election in separate statements and raised concerns over reports of harassment and intimidation of the opposition and civil society groups. The Equatorial Guinean government rejected the reports, calling them interference in the electoral process. Equatorial Guinea has had only two presidents since independence from Spain in 1968. Obiang ousted his uncle Francisco Nguema in a coup in 1979. Closing his campaign on Friday, Obiang said he decided to bring the presidential election forward by several months and hold it together with the legislative and municipal elections to save money due to the economic crisis. Oil and gas production accounts for around 3/4 of revenues in the OPEC member states, but output has dwindled in recent years to around 93,000 barrels per day, or BPD, from around 160,000 BPD in 2015 due to maturing fields. Now over to Rwanda-Congolese border, where Rwandan troops are reported to have killed a Congolese soldier who crossed the tense border, according to the Defense Ministry of Rwanda and the Congolese Armed Forces. Rwanda's Defense Ministry said the soldier entered Rwanda's Rubavu district and started shooting at Rwanda Defense Forces guard towers. Now, Congo Army spokesman Colonel Njinke said the soldier was a new army recruit who may have wandered across the frontier after becoming lost during a night patrol. An investigation was underway into the incident. Tensions have escalated between Congo and Rwanda in recent months over Congolese accusations that Rwanda was supporting the resurgent M23 rebel group, which has been fighting the Congolese government for a decade. Rwanda denies the accusation, and on Saturday, Congolese Prime Minister Sama Lukonde, representing President Felix at a summit of French-speaking nations in Tunisia, refused to take part in a group photo as not to share the stage with Rwanda's President Paul Kagame. Congo's government spokesman said in a statement, the M23 rebels have waged an offensive in eastern Congo, which has killed dozens and displaced even more civilians. Regional powers are working to ease relations between Rwanda and Congo. Kenya's former President Uhuru Kenyatta and Rwanda's President Paul Kagame agreed on Friday on the need for M23 rebels to cease fire and withdraw from captured territories in eastern Congo. And finally, over to Somalia, where the United Nations Security Council has voted to maintain an arms embargo over strong opposition from its government, saying Al-Shabaab still seriously threatens peace and stability in the region and sanctions are needed to degrade its activities. The Somali government has questioned as to how sanctions against its own armed forces is a threat to peace and stability. Now, the resolution, which also expressed concern at the continued presence of affiliates of the small contingent ISIL group in Somalia, was on Thursday approved by a vote of 11-0, with Russia, China, Gabon and Ghana abstaining in support of the call by the Somali federal government, backed by the African Union, to lift the arms embargo, which has been there for 30 years. The resolution keeps in place the codified arms embargo, a ban, for instance, on the sale or transfer of key components of IEDs or improvised explosive devices, a ban on import and export of charcoal that was a key moneymaker for the terrorist group Al-Shabaab, travel bans, asset freezes on individuals threatening peace associated with Al-Shabaab, including financing or facilitating its activities, but also, and the key point here, which the government of Somalia disagrees with, is the banning of heavy weaponry needed by the Somali National Army and Somali Air Force, for instance, to combat Al-Shabaab more effectively. Currently, the Somali government heavily relies on Western firepower to attack Al-Shabaab positions with heavy artillery. Now, in a speech to the UN, the Somali ambassador to the UN slammed the United Nations Security Council for again inhibiting Somalia's ability to effectively combat terrorism. He said, the Somali people ask why it's a threat to international peace for Somalia to have arms to defend its people. Yet other countries are consistently and continuously being armed to defend their territory, such as Ukraine. It's an unjust double standard. He warned that the arms embargo, which is the youngest UN sanctioned regime, is hindering all efforts to rebuild the country's security forces and to counter al-Shabaab militants. Indeed, African Union peacekeeping mission funded by the European Union and the United States, the Western countries that are currently supporting quote-unquote Somali National Army, including the UK, as well as the United Nations own mission in Somalia to support the government, have been there for nearly 16 years. And throughout this time, we've seen a continued arms embargo, which continues to hinder the Somali army and making it more reliant on foreign forces. According to the Somali government, the Somali ambassador to the UN, Abubakar Ismail, continued. The army used a major portion of its armaments during engagements with al-Shabaab in the last 4 months, as the government has been waging a full-blown war after President Hassan Sheikh declared an all-out war in August. And as a result of the arms embargo renewal, our arms, he said, our hands, he continued, are tied in the fight against ruthless enemy at this most critical time. Now, al-Shabaab has increased terrorist attacks in the country, and the Somali armed forces have increased its campaign against the group with local support with militia known as Ma'wisley. And that is all the top stories on our program this week. Please tune in next week for all the top stories on the African continent.